Connor.
Hello. Am I a chipmunk?
Yep. No, you're good.
Okay. Thank you. Yay for tech support. Apparently I was a chipmunk. This happened yesterday during our D&D game too, and the rest of my party just laughed in a very unhelpful fashion while I was apparently a chipmunk to everyone except myself. How's everyone doing? It is, hey Maida, nice to have you here. It is Good Friday in New Zealand, which means that instead of working from home, we're just hanging out at home, not doing work. It's really funny though, I got an email from my boss yesterday reminding me not to work today, which I feel says a lot about what my bosses think of my work ethic. They were like, Jax, don't work tomorrow. Needless to say, we're not the most Christian of families, so Good Friday is not really a big deal for us. But yeah, so I spent all morning basically rebranding our entire everything. So we're Sparrowbell now. As you may have figured out, Sparrowbell is a word that comes from an amalgamation of Sparrowhawk and Belgatherial, which are our long-term online handles. And there's a lot more to come from that department. But so far we have the beginnings of a social media presence. We have a website if you want to go and have a look at that, sparrowbell.com. And a Twitter and an Instagram, which has nothing on it yet, and a Facebook page, and you know, all the usual things. But you can expect a lot more to come in that department. We have lots of ideas, surprising nobody, but yeah, I'm quite excited about it. I spent like 4 hours on it this morning before Adam even got up. Yeah, should we read some of the story? So we're reading The Scarlet Pimpernel, as you can see. We're about halfway through, so it's almost time to choose a new book, I think, so that I can make sure I can actually get hold of it if it's not something I already have. So I might put a poll together later. We're on chapter 14 of The Scarlet Pimpernel. It is titled 1 o'clock precisely, with an exclamation point. Do I need to do a recap? Is there anyone watching who hasn't been paying attention to the story and doesn't know what's happening? It's about the French Revolution. There is a woman who is very torn and being blackmailed by a baddie and into trying to learn the identity of the Scarlet Pimpernel, who is rescuing members of the aristocracy from France so that they don't get guillotined. But she doesn't want to help him. But he has, like, shit on her brother. And today is why your bosses would think that you'd work today. Well, yes. You may have a point. I did work, I just didn't do zoo work. I did Sparrowbell work. But I was excited about it, so it didn't really feel like work. And it was weird, because I was like, oh shit, I've been doing this for 5 hours, and I actually hadn't even realized. Until I was like, oh, it's 10 o'clock, and I've been up since 5, and I've basically just been doing this and drinking coffee. Anyway. So, yeah, French Revolution, rah. Let's dive right in, I reckon. Because, yeah, hopefully you have either kept up or you caught some vague idea of what's happening in the story from my extremely insane little catch-up there. There is a playlist on YouTube. The YouTube stuff will be moving to a Sparrowbell one shortly. It's still on my personal one. But we will be moving it relatively soon. But for now, here we go. Sparrowhawk is sticking it in there, hopefully. It didn't come up with the link, though. Anyway, there's a playlist on YouTube. The link will hopefully show up in chat soon. All right, here we go. Chapter 14. 1 o'clock precisely. Oh, sorry, babe. Oh, well. We'll fix it. We'll get you the link, everybody, later. Or you can just go and find my YouTube. It's linked to it on Facebook and various other places. So, supper had been extremely gay. Don't you love it when that happens? All those present declared that never had Lady Blakeney been more adorable, nor that damned idiot Sir Percy more amusing. His Royal Highness had laughed until the tears streamed down his cheeks at Blakeney's foolish yet funny repartees. His doggerel verse, "We seek him here, we seek him there," etc., was sung to the tune of "Ho, Merry Britons," and to the accompaniment of glasses knocked loudly against the table. Lord Grenville, moreover, had a most perfect cook. Some wags asserted that he was a scion of the old French noblesse, who, having lost his fortune, had come to seek it in the cuisine of the Foreign Office. Marguerite Blakeney was in her most brilliant mood, and surely not a soul in that crowded supper-room had even an inkling of the terrible struggle which was raging within her heart. The clock was ticking so mercilessly on. It was long past midnight, and even the Prince of Wales was thinking of leaving the supper-table. Within the next half-hour, the destinies of two brave men would be pitted against one another, the dearly beloved brother, and he, the unknown hero. Marguerite had not even tried to see Chauvelin during this last hour. She knew that his keen, fox-like eyes would terrify her at once, and incline the balance of her decision towards Armand. Whilst she did not see him, there still lingered in her heart of hearts a vague, undefined hope that something would occur, something big, enormous, epoch-making, which would shift from her young, weak shoulders this terrible burden of responsibility, of having to choose between two such cruel alternatives. But the minutes ticked on with that dull monotony which they had invariably seemed to assume when our very nerves ache with their incessant ticking. After supper, dancing was resumed. His Royal Highness had left, and there was general talk of departing among the older guests. The young were indefatigable, and had started on a new gavotte, which would fill the next quarter of an hour. Marguerite did not feel equal to another dance. There is a limit to the most enduring self-control. Escorted by a cabinet minister, she had once more found her way to the tiny boudoir, still the most deserted among all the rooms. She knew that Chauvelin must be lying in wait for her somewhere, ready to seize the first possible opportunity for a tete-a-tete. His eyes had met hers for a moment after the four-supper minuet, and she knew that the keen diplomatist, with those searching pale eyes of his, had divined that her work was accomplished. Fate had willed it so. Marguerite, torn by the most terrible conflict heart of woman can ever know, had resigned herself to its decrees. But Armand must be saved at any cost, he first of all, for he was her brother, had been mother, father, friend to her ever since she, a tiny babe, had lost both her parents. To think of Armand dying a traitor's death on the guillotine was too horrible even to dwell upon. Impossible, in fact. That could never be, never. As for the stranger, the hero, well, there let fate decide. Marguerite would redeem her brother's life at the hands of the relentless enemy, then let that cunning Scarlet Pimpernel extricate himself after that. Perhaps, vaguely, Marguerite hoped that the daring plotter, who for so many months had baffled an army of spies, would still manage to evade Chauvelin and remain immune to the end. She thought of all this as she sat listening to the witty discourse of the cabinet minister, who, no doubt, felt that he had found in Lady Blakeney a most perfect listener. Suddenly she saw the keen, fox-like face of Chauvelin peeping through the curtained doorway. "Lord Fancourt," she said to the minister, "will you do me a service?" "I am entirely at your ladyship's service," he replied gallantly. "Will you see if my husband is still in the card-room? And if he is, will you tell him that I am very tired and would be glad to go home soon?" The commands of a beautiful woman are binding on all mankind, even on cabinet ministers. Lord Fancourt prepared to obey instantly. "I do not like to leave your ladyship alone," he said. "Never fear. I shall be quite safe here, and I think undisturbed. But I am really tired. You know Sir Percy will drive back to Richmond. It is a long way, and we shall not, and we do not hurry, get home before daybreak." Lord Fancourt had perforce to go. The moment he had disappeared, Chauvelin slipped into the room, and the next instant stood calm and impassive by her side. "You have news for me?" he said. An icy mantle seemed to have suddenly settled around Marguerite's shoulders. Though her cheeks glowed with fire, she felt chilled and numbed. "Oh, Armand, will you ever know the terrible sacrifice of pride, of dignity, of womanliness a devoted sister is making for your sake?" "Nothing of importance," she said, staring mechanically before her, "but it might prove a clue. I contrived, no matter how, to detect Sir Andrew Ffoulkes in the very act of burning a paper at one of these candles in this very room. That paper I succeeded in holding between my fingers for the space of 2 minutes, and to cast my eyes on it for that of 10 seconds. "Time enough to learn its contents?" asked Chauvelin quietly. She nodded. Then she continued in the same even, mechanical tone of voice. In the corner of the paper there was the usual rough device of a small star-shaped flower. Above it I read 2 lines. Everything else was scorched and blackened by the flame. And what were these 2 lines? Her throat seemed suddenly to have contracted. For an instant she felt that she could not speak the words which might send a brave man to his death. It is lucky that the whole paper was not burnt, added Chauvelin with dry sarcasm, for it might have fared ill with Armand St. What were the 2 lines, citoyenne? One was, I start myself tomorrow, she said quietly. The other, if you wish to speak to me, I shall be in the supper-room at 1 o'clock precisely. Chauvelin looked up at the clock just above the mantelpiece. Then I have plenty of time, he said placidly. What are you going to do? She asked. She was pale as a statue. Her hands were icy cold. Her head and heart throbbed with the awful strain upon her nerves. Oh, this was cruel, cruel. What had she done to have deserved all this? Her choice was made. Had she done a vile action or one that was sublime? The recording angel who writes in the book of gold alone could give an answer. What are you going to do? She repeated mechanically. Oh, nothing for the present. After that it will depend. On what? On whom I shall see in the supper-room at 1 o'clock precisely. You will see the Scarlet Pimpernel, of course, but you do not know him. No, but I shall presently. Sir Andrew will have warned him. I think not. When you parted from him after the minuet, he stood and watched you for a moment or two, with a look which gave me to understand that something had happened between you. It was only natural, was it not, that I should make a shrewd guess as to the nature of that something. I thereupon engaged the young gallant in a long and animated conversation. We discussed Herr Gluck's singular success in London, until a lady claimed his arm for supper. Since then, I did not lose sight of him through supper. When we all came upstairs again, Lady Portalis buttonholed him, and started on the subject of pretty Mademoiselle Suzanne de Tournay. I knew he would not move until Lady Portalis had exhausted the subject, which will not be for another quarter of an hour at least, and it is 5 minutes to 1 now. He was preparing to go and went up to the doorway, where, drawing aside the curtain, he stood for a moment, pointing out to Marguerite the distant figure of Sir Andrew Ffoulkes in close conversation with Lady Portalis. I think, he said, with a triumphant smile, that I may safely expect to find the person I seek in the dining-room, fair lady. There may be more than one. Whoever is there as the clock strikes 1 will be shadowed by one of my men. Of these, 1 or perhaps 2 or even 3 will leave for France tomorrow. One of these will be the Scarlet Pimpernel. Yes, and I also, fair lady, will leave for France tomorrow. The papers found at Dover upon the person of Sir Andrew Ffoulkes speak of the neighbourhood of Calais, of an inn which I know well, called Le Chat Gris, of a lonely place somewhere on the coast, the Père Blanchard's hut, which I must endeavour to find. All these places are given as the point where this meddlesome Englishman has bidden the traitor de Tournay and others to meet his emissaries. But it seems that he has decided not to send his emissaries, that he will start himself tomorrow. Now one of those persons whom I shall see anon in the supper-room will be journeying to Calais, and I shall follow that person until I have tracked him to where those fugitive aristocrats await him. For that person, fair lady, will be the man whom I have sought for nearly a year, the man whose energy has outdone me, whose ingenuity has baffled me, whose audacity has set me wondering. Yes, me, who have seen a trick or 2 in my time, the mysterious and elusive Scarlet Pimpernel. And Armand, she pleaded, have I ever broken my word? I promise you that the day the Scarlet Pimpernel and I start for France, I will send you that imprudent letter of his by special courier. More than that, I will pledge you the word of France that the day I lay hands on that meddlesome Englishman, St. will be here in England, safe in the arms of his charming sister. And with a deep and elaborate bow, and another look at the clock, Chauvelin glided out of the room. It seemed to Marguerite that through all the noise, all the din of music, dancing, and laughter, she could hear his cat-like tread gliding through the vast reception rooms, that she could hear him go down the massive staircase, reach the dining-room, and open the door. Fate had decided, had made her speak, had made her do a vile and abominable thing for the sake of the brother she loved. She lay back in her chair, passive and still, seeing the figure of her relentless enemy ever present before her aching eyes. When Chauvelin reached the supper-room, it was quite deserted. It had that woe-begone, forsaken, tawdry appearance which reminds one so much of a ball dress the morning after. Half-empty glasses littered the table, unfolded napkins lay about the chairs, turned towards one another in groups of 2s and 3s, seemed like the seats of ghosts in close conversation with one another. There were sets of 2 chairs very close to one another, in the far corners of the room which spoke of recent whispered flirtations over cold game pie and champagne. There were sets of 3 and 4 chairs that recalled pleasant, animated discussions over the latest scandal. There were chairs straight up in a row that still looked starchy, critical, acid, like antiquated dowagers. There were a few isolated single chairs, close to the table, that spoke of gourmands intent on the most recherched dishes, and others overturned on the floor, that spoke volumes on the subject of my Lord Grenville's cellars. It was a ghost-like replica, in fact, of that fashionable gathering upstairs, a ghost that haunts every house where balls and good suppers are given, a picture drawn with white chalk on grey cardboard, dull and colourless, now that the bright silk dresses and gorgeously embroidered coats were no longer there to fill in the foreground, and now that the candles flickered sleepily in their sockets. Chauvelin smiled benignly, and rubbing his long, thin hands together, he looked around the deserted supper-room, whence even the last flunky had retired in order to join his friends in the hall below. All was silent in the dimly lighted room, whilst the sound of the gavotte, the hum of distant talk and laughter, and the rumble of an occasional couch outside only seemed to reach this palace of the sleeping beauty as the murmur of some flitting spooks far away. It all looked so peaceful, so luxurious and so still, that the keenest observer, a veritable prophet, could never have guessed that, at this present moment, that deserted supper-room was nothing but a trap, laid for the capture of the most cunning and audacious plotter those stirring times had ever seen. Chauvelin pondered and tried to peer into the immediate future. What would this man be like, whom he and the leaders of the whole revolution had sworn to bring to his death? Everything about him was weird and mysterious. His personality, which he so cunningly concealed, the power he wielded over 19 English gentlemen who seemed to obey his every command, blindly and enthusiastically, the passionate love and submission he had roused in his little trained band, and above all his marvellous audacity, the boundless impudence which had caused him to beard his most implacable enemies within the very walls of Paris. No wonder that in France the sobriquet of the mysterious Englishman roused in the people a superstitious shudder. Chauvelin himself, as he gazed around the deserted room, where presently the weird hero would appear, felt a strange feeling of awe creeping all down his spine. But his plans were well laid. He felt sure that the Scarlet Pimpernel had not been warned, and felt equally sure that Marguerite Blakeney had not played him false. If she had, a cruel look that would have made her shudder gleamed in Chauvelin's keen, pale eyes. If she had played him a trick, Armand Saint-Just would suffer the extreme penalty. But no, of course she had not played him false. Fortunately, the supper-room was deserted. This would make Chauvelin's task all the easier when presently that unsuspecting enigma would enter it alone. No one was here now, save Chauvelin himself. Stay, as he surveyed with a satisfied smile the solitude of the room, the cunning agent of the French government became aware of the peaceful, monotonous breathing of someone of my Lord Grenville's guests, who no doubt had supped both wisely and well, and was enjoying a quiet sleep away from the din of the dancing above. Chauvelin looked around once more, and there in the corner of a sofa, in the dark angle of the room, his mouth open, his eyes shut, the sweet sounds of peaceful slumbers proceeding from his nostrils, reclined the gorgeously apparelled, long-limbed husband of the cleverest woman in Europe. Chauvelin looked at him as he lay there, placid, unconscious, at peace with all the world and himself, after the best of suppers, and a smile that was almost one of pity softened for a moment the hard lines of the Frenchman's face, and the sarcastic twinkle of his pale eyes. Evidently the slumberer, deep in dreamless sleep, would not interfere with Chauvelin's trap for catching that cunning Scarlet Pimpernel. Again he rubbed his hands together, and following the example of Sir Percy Blakeney, he too stretched himself out in the corner of another sofa, shut his eyes, opened his mouth, gave forth sounds of peaceful breathing, and waited. And that is the end of chapter 14. Do any of you not know who's going to walk into this room? And do you have theories? That's the part I'm interested in. Okay. Oh. Maida, you know the story though, don't you? I want people to try to guess without who don't already know. If you already know, don't spoil it. But it would be interesting for people to try to guess. No guesses, huh? That's all good. So, you're welcome. You're very welcome. This is really fun, and I'm actually really enjoying the story. It took a little while to get going, I won't lie. But that's not unusual for stories of this era, so I'm okay with that. But it is quite fun. I've never read it. Like, I know who the Scarlet Pimpernel is, because, you know, background in literature. But I've never actually read it before, so it's quite fun. I'm rather enjoying it. I particularly love the, like, elaborate descriptions of, like, the dresses and the fashion. It's really cool. It's fun to read. Apart from the fact that I'm massacring the French. And I know that I'm massacring the French, and I hope that you all forgive me for massacring the French. Maybe the next book can have German in it, and I'll be able to pronounce those words properly. But yeah, well, that's me. So apparently, possibly tomorrow morning at some point, maybe. It does, yeah, it really does. It's great. I am going to be playing a game. We haven't yet decided what game. I'm going to go and look at the poll in a little while that we put up yesterday, and we will probably pick like a top 5 based on what we have available to us and what people seem super keen on. And then I will be playing that game tomorrow. Probably very badly, but I'm going to give it a go. And we'll see what happens. Because I have crossed the 500 threshold on my Ko-fi.com account. And I promised that when we did that, I would play a game chosen by the community and live stream myself doing it. The last time I tried to live stream myself playing a game, I couldn't even get the controls right. So it may be ridiculous, but we'll try. We'll see what happens. We'll give it a go. A length of time for the game? No, I don't think so. It'll probably, or for the poll. We'll probably, I'll pull out the data that's been up there for the last 24 hours, and then we can pick for the game. Yeah, we can pick a game, and then that'll probably inform how long it is. A couple of hours, probably. An hour or 2, maybe. We'll see how it goes. If I'm really crap and nobody is having a good time, then we'll cut it short. But if it's hilarious and people are having fun, then we'll, you know. We should probably set a time to do it, though. Should we do it like this time? Like, or let's say midday. How about midday? Midday? Sound good? We'll go with midday. Because that way, everyone will be up. I'll be up. Adam will be up. He can run tech in the back. Yeah. And, yeah. We'll give it a go. See what happens. I'm scared I'm going to be so crap and it won't be entertaining. I don't mind being shit if it's entertaining, but anyway, we'll try. We'll try. All right, my darlings, I'm going to go away now. You all, thank you for coming and listening, and I hope you all are happy and safe and well wherever you are. Stay safe. Stay awesome. I love you. Bye.